She was asked to solve an advanced math problem, not because they needed the answer, but because they wanted to watch her freeze, stumble, and fall silent. In a seminar room filled with tailored suits and PhD name tags, she showed up in faded canvas shoes and a wrinkled shirt. "Did you get lost, ma'am? This isn't the PTA meeting," someone laughed. But when the marker touched her hand, and hundreds of eyes waited for her to embarrass herself, the whiteboard began to witness the opposite. The Ascension Forum at St. Lennox University was a cathedral of intellect, its ancient brick walls draped in ivy, its seminar halls aglow with chandeliers worth more than Manhattan penthouses. This exclusive conference, reserved for Ivy League PhDs and million-dollar AI research sponsors, buzzed with tailored wool suits, silk ties, and name tags boasting titles like Chair of Quantum Computing. Polished oak tables held crystal water pitchers, and the air carried notes of oud and ambition. Only 300 attendees were invited, their sapphire badges checked by staff in velvet vests. Beyond the hall, a marble atrium led to a private lecture theater, its doors reserved for keynote speakers. Lillian Moore Bellamy slipped through a side entrance, her jeans faded, her plain t-shirt tucked under a cardigan with frayed cuffs, her chestnut hair tied back with a rubber band. At 31, raised in a modest Vermont town, she'd tutored herself in advanced mathematics while caring for her ailing mother, declining PhD offers from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton. In her hands, a thick notebook brimmed with handwritten formulas, her only companion besides her husband, Dr. Henry Bellamy, the forum's keynote speaker. The hall's stairs cut through her, their whispers a gathering storm. Lillian's presence was a crack in the forum's polished facade, her notebook an affront to the elite's curated world. A Yale professor in a $4,000 Zegna suit paused mid-conversation, his sapphire badge glinting. "Is she his bag holder?" he muttered, loud enough to turn heads. A Stanford researcher in a $3,000 Armani blazer chuckled, leaning toward her colleague. Probably his new girlfriend who never went to college. The seminar room's laughter rippled, attendees covering smirks with manicured hands. Lillian stood still, her hazel eyes steady, her notebook pressed against her chest. She'd come to support Henry, the man whose field's metal she'd quietly shaped. The audience's anger stirred, their hearts tensing at the casual cruelty of these academic gatekeepers, their disdain ablaze against Lillian's quiet grace. The mockery escalated, a venomous chorus orchestrated by the forum's elite. Becca Sloan, a third-year PhD candidate from St. Lennox, strutted forward, her tailored Chanel skirt swishing, her blonde ponytail sharp as her sneer. At 26, raised in Boston's elite circles, she'd built a reputation for cutting down rivals. She eyed Lillian's frayed cardigan and scoffed. "Ma'am, this area is for main speakers only. Free coffees downstairs," she said, her voice a sharpened blade. The attendees roared, their laughter echoing off the oak walls. Becca tossed her ponytail, her jasmine-scented perfume wafting, a scent Lillian knew Henry disliked. Lillian's fingers tightened on her notebook, her face calm. But the audience's fury surged, their hearts pounding at this personal attack. Becca's arrogance a spark in the frost. The scorn grew vicious, a coordinated assault on Lillian's presence. A conference staffer, Margaret Voss, approached, her velvet vest crisp, her face etched with decades of enforcing protocol. At 50, raised in upstate New York, she prided herself on maintaining order. She pointed toward the exit, her voice firm but not cruel. "Let's go, miss. You're disrupting the session." The crowd cheered, their silk ties glinting as they waved her toward the atrium. A Princeton alum in a $5,000 Brioni suit shouted, "Did you get lost? This isn't the community college." Laughter roared, academics nudging each other. A postdoc hissed, "She doesn't even look like a grad student." Another added, "That notebook's probably just doodles and she dares sit here?" The insults were a guillotine, each word a lash against Lillian's silence. The audience's rage boiled, their hearts breaking for Lillian, furious at this mob's relentless cruelty. The academics' scorn turned vicious as Lillian stood in the seminar room, their mockery a choreographed assault meant to crush her spirit. A cluster of Ivy League professors in $7,000 Savile Row suits gathered near the oak tables, their voices a venomous chorus. "She's a blight on this forum's prestige," one sneered, flicking a gold fountain pen toward Lillian's frayed cardigan. Back to the library, sweetheart. Another waved a sapphire badge, shouting, "Her notebook looks like it's from a high school sale." The crowd's laughter roared, staff nudging each other, their cufflinks glinting. A quantum computing expert bellowed, "She's an insult to every paper presented here." The taunts were a guillotine, each word a blade against Lillian's poised silence. Henry's lecture theater loomed beyond the hall, but the seminar room's disdain was a crushing weight. The audience's rage surged, their hearts pounding, furious at this orchestrated cruelty, their anger a fire ready to consume the elite's arrogance. Becca Sloan struck again, her words a calculated strike to wound Lillian before the elite. "So, what do you think you're going to understand at a forum like this?" she sneered, standing at Lillian's table, her Chanel skirt gleaming. "Or should we hand you a freshman entrance exam so you can experience the field?" Without waiting for a reply, Becca marched to the whiteboard, her marker scratching out a convoluted combinatorics problem, one that had stumped her own research group. "If you solve this before the coffee break ends, I'll publicly apologize and get your coffee for a week," she said, her voice loud enough to silence nearby murmurs. "If not, kindly step aside and make room for real academics." The attendees cheered, their scorn a suffocating tide, their whispers buzzing. "She's a fraud!" Lillian's hazel eyes burned with quiet fire, but her smile held, a shield against the challenge. The audience's fury roared, their hearts breaking for Lillian, enraged at this public shaming unveiled before the room. The elite's disdain turned personal, their voices a venomous symphony. A Harvard professor in a $6,000 chiton suit leaned against the seminar table, his voice loud and cutting. "She's a nobody, probably here to fetch Bellamy's notes," he sneered, gesturing at Lillian's notebook. "Look at that cardigan. Did she knit it herself?" His colleagues laughed, their sapphire badges flashing. An MIT postdoc shouted, "She's an embarrassment to whoever let her in." The crowd's laughter was a suffocating tide, their arrogance a public execution. Lillian adjusted her rubber band, her hazel eyes unwavering, but the seminar room's scorn was a crushing weight. The audience's anger flared, their hearts pounding at this institutional betrayal, their fury a fire ready to consume the forum's sanctity. Becca Sloan's disdain sharpened, her words a calculated strike to wound Lillian before the seminar room's elite. "She's not just out of place, she's a disgrace," she declared, her Chanel skirt shimmering as she gestured at Lillian's canvas shoes. "Henry must be horrified to see this. Nobody in his session." Her entourage erupted in laughter, their silk scarves fluttering, eyes darting to Lillian's notebook. "She's a charity case, not a scholar," Becca sneered, her voice loud enough to silence nearby whispers. The attendees cheered, their scorn a suffocating tide, their murmurs buzzing. "She's a fake." Lillian's hazel eyes burned with quiet fire, but her smile held, a shield against the betrayal. The lecture theater gleamed in the distance, but the seminar room's disdain was a crushing weight. The audience's fury roared, their hearts breaking for Lillian, enraged at this PhD candidate's treachery unveiled before the room. The staff's complicity deepened the wound, their actions a fresh betrayal. A session coordinator, Clara Holt, in a tailored blazer, stepped forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Miss, the general seating is in the atrium," she said, pointing toward a side door, her smirk mirrored by nearby academics. "We don't allow such guests in the main hall," she added, sparking chuckles from the crowd. At 28, raised in Connecticut, Clara prided herself on her gatekeeping role. The crowd's approval was a crushing tide, their arrogance a public crucifixion. Lillian clutched her notebook, her hazel eyes steady, but the seminar room's disdain was a suffocating weight. The audience's rage flared, their hearts pounding at this institutional scorn, their fury ablaze against St. Lennox's sanctity. The seminar room staff's disdain turned overt, their actions a public shaming orchestrated for the academics' amusement. A senior usher, Richard Tate, approached Lillian near the oak tables, his velvet vest pristine, his voice dripping with condescension. "Miss, this hall is for credentialed attendees only," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Your attire suggests you're in the wrong venue." He gestured at her jeans, his smirk mirrored by nearby staff. "We don't typically allow such simplicity at the Ascension Forum," he added, sparking laughter from the academics and coordinators. The crowd's approval was a crushing tide, their arrogance a public execution. Lillian clutched her notebook, her hazel eyes unwavering, but the seminar room's scorn was a suffocating weight. The audience's rage flared, their hearts pounding at this institutional betrayal, their fury ablaze against the forum's sanctity. The academics' cruelty peaked, their voices a venomous storm. A Cornell researcher in a $4,000 Canali suit leaned forward, his voice loud and cutting. "She's a fraud, probably snuck in to spy on Bellamy's work," he hissed, his companions nodding, their cufflinks flashing. "Her notebook's a prop, just a trick to blend in," another added, shouting. "She's a con artist, the forum's been duped." The laughter roared, each rumor a dagger aimed at Lillian's heart. Attendees whispered lies, their accusations spreading like wildfire. "She's after his research." Lillian's fingers brushed her rubber band, her gaze steady, but the crowd's slander was a crushing weight. The audience's anger erupted, their hearts with Lillian, their fury a tidal wave against this malicious slander, desperate for the truth to shatter the elite's lies. Lillian stood silent, not a tear in her eyes, her arms cradling the notebook, her life's work, a tapestry of formulas that had shaped Henry's career. She walked to the whiteboard, her canvas shoes soft on the oak floor, and picked up the marker. The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes waiting for her to falter. Her strokes were calm, deliberate, not a single waver, no erasing, no corrections. In 3 minutes, the board was a masterpiece of logic, a level 2 supersymmetric permutation model unfolding in elegant lines. She set the marker down and returned to her seat, her hazel eyes unyielding. Becca scoffed. "That's it? Sure you didn't mess up?" The audience's hearts stirred, their anger shifting to anticipation, Lillian's quiet strength a spark in the frost. An older professor, Dr. Arthur Wren, rose from the front row, his tweed jacket worn but dignified. At 70, a legend in combinatorics, he walked slowly to the board, his glasses glinting. His expression shifted from composed to stunned. This is the shortest known solution to this problem," he said, his voice trembling. "She used a supersymmetric model, something the advisory board hasn't even fully proven yet." The room froze, crystal pitchers trembling, gasps rippling through the perfumed air. Attendees stood, crowding the board, their sapphire badges glinting. "Who is she? Why haven't we heard her name? Where did she come from?" Becca's Chanel skirt seemed to dim, her ponytail no shield against the truth. The audience's pride swelled, their hearts thundering as Lillian's brilliance reshaped the seminar room's power dynamic. The air shifted as the keynote session began, the crowd gathering in the lecture theater. Henry Bellamy stepped onto the stage, his gray suit tailored but understated, his presence a thunderclap. At 40, raised in Chicago, he'd won the Fields Medal for his work on algorithmic symmetry, much of it built on Lillian's unseen contributions. He adjusted the mic, his gray eyes locking on Lillian in the front row. "I'd like to give up my speaking time to someone far more deserving," he said, his voice steady. "This is Lillian Moore Bellamy, who turned down 3 PhD offers from Harvard, MIT, and Princeton to care for her ailing mother, the one who wrote 80% of the core algorithms in my research, and the only person in this room who truly understands why this problem was created in the first place." The audience's hearts soared, their anger transformed into awe, as Henry's truth unraveled the lies that had bound Lillian. The room froze, Becca Sloane's coffee cup slipping from her hand, shattering on the oak floor. Henry continued, his voice cutting through the silence. "She doesn't need titles. She doesn't need badges. She has genius, and that's something no one here can claim." The attendees' cufflinks seemed to dim, their faces taut with shock. Clara Holt stood motionless, her gatekeeping role a confession of failure. Henry gestured to Lillian, his hand steady. "This forum invited me, but it's her work that deserves your applause." The audience cheered, their fury transformed into pride as Lillian's truth began to reshape the forum's legacy. Dr. Wren nodded, his glasses glinting with respect, the room holding its breath for her response. Lillian rose, her frayed cardigan a quiet crown, and took the mic. "I didn't come to prove anything," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I came to support my husband." She paused, her hazel eyes sweeping the room. "But since you asked for a solution, I gave you one." The auditorium erupted, attendees standing, their applause a symphony of awe. Becca Sloan bowed her head, her Chanel skirt no shield, and muttered, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Moore Bellamy." Representatives from MIT, Stanford, and Caltech approached, their collaboration offers extended with trembling hands. Lillian smiled, took Henry's hand, and said, "I just came to take you home for lunch." The audience roared, their hearts pounding as her grace crushed the elite's arrogance. The fallout was immediate, a reckoning delivered in silence. Becca Sloan was summoned to the advisory board, her research funding revoked, her reputation a cautionary tale among the attendees. Clara Holt was reassigned to administrative duties, her gatekeeping career dust. The Harvard professor who'd mocked Lillian's cardigan was excluded from future forums, his influence null. The Cornell researcher's grant proposals were rejected, his slander exposed as lies. The staff who'd sneered were disciplined, their roles diminished. The academics who'd spread rumors hid their badges, their authority null. Lillian stood beside Henry, her canvas shoes steady, her notebook a testament to her truth. The audience's hearts thundered, their anger transformed into triumph, Lillian's victory a blaze that humbled the forum's elite in St. Lennox's hallowed halls. Henry Bellamy's presence commanded the lecture theater, his voice a gavel strike that silenced the chandelier-lit air. "You dared to mock Lillian Moore Bellamy, the mind behind this forum's greatest insights," he said, his gray eyes a storm of controlled fury. "Your degrees, your titles, mean nothing against her truth." He raised a tablet, revealing a cascade of severed ties. Becca Sloan's research grants, Clara Holt's conference privileges, the academics' advisory roles, all terminated by St. Lennox's board. "Your names are erased from academic circles," he declared, his gaze locking on Becca. "You've lost more than prestige, you've lost your futures." The crowd's gasps were a symphony of shock, their empires crumbling under his command. Lillian stood beside him, her frayed cardigan glowing, her triumph sealed by Henry's unrelenting power. The elite's downfall was a spectacle, their arrogance shattered under Henry's command. Becca Sloan stumbled back, her Chanel skirt a mockery, her reputation a cautionary tale among the attendees. Clara Holt's gatekeeping empire plummeted, her scorn a public wound, her escorts pushing her toward the atrium exit. The Columbia professor's grants collapsed, his slander exposed as lies. The professors who'd flicked pens hid their cufflinks, their advisory roles null. The staff who'd sneered were dismissed, their careers ended. The academics who'd spread rumors were shunned, their influence dust. Lillian stood tall, her canvas shoes a quiet crown, her hazel eyes unyielding. The audience's hearts thundered, their anger transformed into pride, Lillian's victory and Henry's wrath a blaze that humbled the world's brightest in the forum's hallowed halls. The audience roared, their hearts soaring as his global retribution crushed the elite's arrogance. No one knew Lillian's past, not the attendees, not Becca, not the staff. At 20, she'd solved differential equations while nursing her mother, her diner tips funding textbooks. At 25, she met Henry at a math symposium, her quiet brilliance drawing him in a room of egos. Their marriage, a private vow in a Vermont meadow, was built on love and shared formulas. Becca's challenge, the staff's badges, the academic suits, none matched the weight of the notebook Lillian carried. Now she stood in the lecture theater, her rubber band a testament to her truth, her silence a furnace that burned through their lies. The forum resumed, but the attendees' eyes remained on Lillian. A Caltech dean approached, his voice low with respect. "Mrs. Moore Bellamy, your work, it's extraordinary," he said, his earlier scorn a regret. The academics retreated, their influence null, their aides scrambling to salvage ties with St. Lennox. The sponsors hovered, their empires trembling in Lillian's shadow. She walked toward the atrium, her hazel eyes tracing Henry's proud smile. The chandeliers dimmed, the autumn light fading, leaving a trail of the world's brightest pleading for her favor. Their bows a silent surrender to the woman they'd mocked. She was asked to solve an advanced math problem, not because they needed the answer, but because they wanted to watch her freeze, stumble, and fall silent. In a seminar room filled with tailored suits and PhD name tags, she showed up in faded canvas shoes and a wrinkled shirt. But when the marker touched her hand and hundreds of eyes waited for her to embarrass herself, the whiteboard witnessed the opposite. The real genius doesn't need to shine. She just needs to write, and the room will rise. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you were Lillian?